had this publication in the highlands of New Guinea, in Eastern Europe, Asia, whatever. There are things that are specific to the country's sensitivities, cultural issues, legal implications. For an elder that once in his lifetime deals with an allegation of child abuse, we're always going to say, why don't you ring the branch office? But I appreciate you using it as an example, and if there was an applicable example, we would have the authority to adjust that for Australia.
Well, that's the point I'm getting at, Mr. Spinks, because by saying my hypothetical is unrealistic doesn't answer the question. You understand the substance of the question is to try and determine what is the bound, or what are the bounds of the Australia branch's authority to determine something different from what is set out in these documents that have come down from New York. That's what I'm trying to understand from you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I apologise if I misunderstood that in any way. But I can only restate again that the Australia branch does have that authority. So, for example, in the United States, they have a much stronger ecclesiastical privilege, or lawyer-client privilege, perhaps even, than we do here in Australia. So,
sorry, just to clarify, that's in the law you're talking about.
Yes, I'm talking about in the law.
Yes.
No, in the law.
Yes.
So, by its very nature, that means that the Australia Branch Committee is responsible for ensuring that the scriptural policies are followed in harmony with Australian law. Now, in the United States, there are all different mandatory reporting requirements. That branch office would have to do the same. There are very few requirements in some of the Eastern European countries or the Pacific Islands, so those branches have to do their best.
Well, the reason for that is because the scriptures say, as I understand it, that you must obey the law. So if the law requires you to do something different in one country from another, then that's in accordance with the scriptures and you'll do it differently, not so.
Primarily, certainly that's the case, to make sure that...
But I'm addressing a different question, which is as to, in your wisdom, deciding that something should be done differently, the scope that you have to actually adopt that. So I'll take a different example. In the same document at page 90, so Shepherd the Flock, tab 120, page 90, paragraph 3. This is now within the judicial hearing procedure, and it says here only those witnesses have relevant testimony and so on, and it says observers should not be present for moral support. And if in Australia you decided that a person complaining of sexual abuse must or is entitled to have a support person present and therefore an observer, would you have scope to do that?
We already do it, Mr. Stewart. We already do it. That paragraph, if I can, is not talking, and I think this is where some of the confusion comes in again, that chapter 7 is a judicial hearing procedure for all manner of... this is not a child abuse manual, and it wasn't intended to be presented that way. This is a shepherding manual that deals from...
Yes, we understand that.
Okay, so that context is not child abuse, and in fact, where it makes direct reference to child abuse, it's generally inserted. That paragraph is talking about a general judicial process, and
we understand that.
Well, if I could just, sorry, if I could just make
point, yes.
Could I just make the point? If that paragraph is talking about the accused, it's talking about the accused. It says here only those...
I understand it talks about the accused, but it would seem to go further. It says in the hearing, observers should not be present.
I think I've already made the point that we wouldn't have, in this day and age and for a long time, we would not have a victim or a survivor of child abuse in a judicial hearing. This is talking about the accused. This is talking about
Mr. Spinks, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can't see how this paragraph's talking about the accused. It's talking about witnesses who have relevant testimony regarding the alleged wrongdoing. Now, that's people who are bringing evidence against the accused. How is it a paragraph about the accused?
I apologise, Your Honour. The middle sentence, it talks, I appreciate it's about witnesses. It says those who intend to testify only about the character of the accused is our point. I appreciate, again...
That's character evidence, and that might be good or bad for the accused, But that's the second sentence. And then the third sentence is a general statement about witnesses not hearing the details of the testimony of other witnesses. That's a general proposition. And then observers should not be present for moral support. How is this a statement directed to the accused?
I apologise again, Your Honour, if that sentence is poorly written, and I can see...
It's not the sentence, the whole paragraph is talking about witnesses to the wrongdoing.
And again, Your Honour, we would not expect a victim or survivor of child abuse to be in the judicial setting in this day and age. Did that happen in those incidents 24, 25 years ago? Yes. Is that clearly set out other than in the document that we've asked to tender, the 1995 Watchtower? Could this paragraph be better written to say this is all about the accused? I agree totally. Our application of it in practice in the service department has always been for the accused who's trying to defend himself against allegations to not have observers there for moral support other than the specific witnesses. We don't want the survivor there as a witness at that judicial hearing.
Mr. Spinks, the document itself, you understand, is very confusing.
I do. I do.
Just to go back to something you said, Mr. Spinks, this particular document is I'm looking at the reverse of the title page at Ringtail 0004. It's published in 2010 by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, published in New York. And this particular one that I have before me is a 2012 printing of it. And this applies or was issued to elders throughout the world, is that right?
Correct.
Yes. So it's not, this document or its equivalent does not change from country to country.
It's in multiple languages, but it would be basically the same.
Uniform, yes. And I noticed you use the word lands rather than countries. Can you explain that?
I should know my geography better. How many lands are there in the world, Mr. Stewart? How many countries?
I'm not.
I've got an idea.
To answer your questions, particularly such difficult ones.
I apologise. You've asked me the question. I'm not certain how many countries there are in the world and how many lands, but it's simply. I can't answer the question. But
what is a land? What is a land? When you say there are Jehovah's Witness congregations in X number of lands, or what do you mean? Do you not mean countries?
It would include islands, so I think that's probably it's probably not a significant point, but there would be 239 different islands or countries. I didn't write it. I'm not certain what it means.
So you don't know why the language of lands is adopted by the Jehovah's Witnesses rather than countries?
Well, I don't think we refer. We use islands, so whether there's some.
Indonesia, for example, is Indonesia one land or however many it is? 1,000 lands, how many islands?
No, you've got me, Mr. Stewart. I couldn't explain. I don't know the reason.
All right, that was just by the way. Can we look at paragraph 35 of your statement? You say that the two elders, so this is now dealing with the investigation stage, as I understand it, responding to reports and allegations. The two elders, with the consent of the parent guardian, would talk to the victim with the parent guardian present. Now, firstly, is it necessary that two elders undertake this role?
No, but I think what we've presented there is what would normally happen. But could there be a situation? I reread that 1998 document and it said one of the elders and a parent or a witness. So generally two elders investigate matters, but could it be a mother, a sister in the congregation, a close friend and one of the elders? Yes.
So the generic advice and direction is that two elders must investigate, but you're saying that needn't be followed.
Absolutely.
Mr. Spinks, one of the concerns that's been expressed to us, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is that, and I assume this is true of most of your churches, the elder is likely to be known or know well an alleged abuser if it's a male.
That's true.
How do you think it is for a young person having to go to talk about intimate details of their abuse to a person who they know is a person well known to the abuser?
Extremely challenging. Perhaps, I just want to take your point on board, Your Honour, perhaps lessened a little by the fact that these same elders, we're not talking about in a church confessional with robes or whatever, we're also talking about men that have been their family friends to the young ones. They've had meals in each other's homes, and so the challenge is also in other ways facilitates that level of friendship and trust that exists. But I acknowledge the challenge that you're raising, certainly.
What do we do about it?
I think the point that we've made, and I'm not suggesting that I've got answers to these deep questions that the Commission is raising, but I think one of the points that we've made, that whether it's a male or a female, or a male and female together, a man and a woman together, at that stage, whoever it is needs to have the genuine concern of the victim to be kindly, sensitive, compassionate. That same would apply whether that's a man or a woman. But
that's undoubtedly true of anyone in this role, but that's not addressing the issue. The issue is that the person who is being asked to accept and believe the allegation is known to be a close or good friend of the alleged abuser. And that's, as we discussed, inherent in the process, isn't it?
Yes, Your Honour, and I imagine that's going to be the same in any community where the individuals, in a faith-based organisation, where the individuals know and care for one another. That's the challenge that I understand that you're raising.
Well, I'm not sure it's in all, but by any means. But again, I stress, your adherents are required to bring their allegations to the church, aren't they?
In a broad sense, I'm happy to say yes, because we know that's the case. I think the one thing that has got lost a little in some of the assertions that have been made is that I don't see published anywhere, and I know to be the case, that we don't demand or scripturally enforce a victim of rape, a victim of child abuse. It's actually a misapplication. There's been a few scriptures misapplied, but that's a clear misapplication of Leviticus chapter 5 and verse 1, as an open reading of it would show. But we don't require a victim to come forward if they choose not to, and that's why we have in some cases helping victims who are not yet ready to reveal who the perpetrator is.
Yes.
Does it have to be an elder who undertakes the investigation? Or let me put that differently. Does it have to be an elder to whom an allegation of child sexual abuse is made? In other words, you've said it might be an elder with someone else, perhaps a sister from the congregation or whomever, but does it have to be an elder at all?
I think if you reread the case studies, you'll find numerous examples of where the parents or guardians have provided the statement without intervention from the elders. So the clear answer to that is no, that doesn't have to.
Well, they've provided it to the elder.
So if you're saying then at some point, are the elders involved in the investigation process? The answer is yes.
Why is it necessary to have elders from that particular church carry out this function, as opposed to going outside to people who aren't known?
I think it's a very, an excellent suggestion, and one that's been discussed at length by us over the last couple of weeks when that's been raised, and I think we've taken one step towards it. We've got a lot of other steps to take, as you've highlighted, but one step is to have, at least when it gets to the judicial stage, to make sure that has outside involvement. But I think, again, it's a very good point, Your Honour.
Is there any possibility of having women join in the decision-making process?
Scripturally, I appreciate that's a pivotal question, and that comes to the question of is it likely that women will take on the role of elders in the congregation, and scripturally that's not the arrangement.
Your answer to my question is there's no possibility of women being involved in the decision-making process, is that right?
Happy to say a clear yes, that will Jehovah's Witnesses find a way to adjust the scriptural process of the elders being men in the congregation, and my answer to that is no.
You understand the Bible, I assume, in its social and political context when it was written?
I do.
And social and political contexts change over time, don't they?
They do.
Does the approach of Jehovah's to the application of the Bible as a consequence change as society changes?
The Jehovah's Witnesses, we won't change what is a clear scriptural arrangement. So are there things that we would all do, that we do differently now, that are based on Bible principles? I think Your Honour has highlighted a very clear one, in that do Jehovah's Witnesses apply the Mosaic law from an ancient civilization that dealt with the theocratic, the civil and the criminal all as one code? No, we don't, because as Mr De Roy said, Christ ended the law. Clear distinction between theocratic and the law. So there have things changed over time? Yes. Will some of those clear instructions in the scriptures change from the Christian era? I don't believe they will for Jehovah's Witnesses, because of the application of the arrangements in the Bible. And so I've reasoned through this myself, Your Honour, that will Jehovah's Witnesses adjust what we see as clear instructions in the scriptures? Will Muslim people change what they believe in the Quran? Will Aboriginal people change what they believe is in their culture? I think there are just some things that are so deeply a part of their faith and belief system that what we need to do is make sure that we conform with the law, that we do our best to harmonise with the culture. But do some of those things fit neatly into 21st century Australia? I understand the point that you're making.
And I take it that if it was the case that there was a conflict between what science might tell us about human behaviour and the way these things should be dealt with and your understanding of the Bible, then the Bible would still prevail. All
scripture is inspired of God. We, like many Christians, we're not fanatically trying to find references to make life difficult. We are applying scripture as we read it in the best way we can to sensitively integrate with modern society.
But you understand the point. There may well be, we're in one such area where science has taught us a lot in recent years about sexual abuse and how to appropriately respond to it. But if that science was in conflict with your understanding of the Bible, then the Bible would prevail.
Absolutely, the Bible will prevail. And if I could, Your Honour, that's why hundreds of Jehovah's Witnesses are imprisoned in South Korea, in Taganrog, Russia, Azerbaijan, Eritrea, because they won't budge on a clear Bible principle that will endure forever.
So if the law of the country was to prescribe a mode of behaviour which was in conflict with your understanding of the Bible, what would happen then?
We would apply the words in the book of Acts 5:29 to obey God as ruler rather than man, and as we did here during the Second World War, as thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses did when they refused to come under the Nazi regime, the fact that the government at the time makes a law, Jehovah's Witnesses will always obey Scripture, and that's why we have 28 successful outcomes in the European Court of Human Rights, because we won't budge where there's a clear Bible principle that happens to be in conflict with the government of the day.
We might take lunch.
Your Honour, with your leave, just before we do, I might ask Mr. Spinks to think about something at lunch, because he may be able to help us after lunch, and that's this. Mr. Spinks, taking this procedure and the principles that govern the procedure, what I'd like to ask you to identify is what elements of it are based on the Scriptures such that they could not be changed. So one that springs to mind is the two-witness rule, for example. Maybe I'm mistaken on that. You can explain to me later. But what elements are there that are required by the Scriptures so that we understand the constraints within which you work in developing a proper system?
Yes, we'll take lunch.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.